Hey everyone, welcome back to our C tutorial. In this lesson, we're going to be talking about variables and data types. And so this is going to be sort of your bread and butter way of getting into starting to really write some programs. So we're going to move past just printing and we're going to start talking about storing variables, and we're going to start talking about the different data types that are available in C. And so it's really good to learn this, to pay attention to this, and then build upon it. So let's talk first of all about variables. And so a variable is just a way to store input. It's a way to store information that can be used later in functions and classes, things of that nature. It's just like it sounds, it's variable. But in C, your variables have to have a data type attached to them. And so this data type, it can be int, it can be char or character, it can be float, it can be decimal, it can be void, which we'll talk about later. You can have things that are void, and then it can also be a pointer, and we'll talk about pointers in several different lessons later on. And so we're going to spend a lot of time on pointers because pointers are something that can be very tricky, but they're also very important in C and C++. So a variable, like I said, has a data type, and the way to declare a variable is you have to put in the data type. So for example, int, which is an integer. And so you put in the data type first, and then you put in a name for it. And a lot of times, with naming conventions, some people have different views about them. Me personally, I like to use variable names that start with a lowercase word first, and then go up for the next one. So it's kind of called camel case. There were some that became like Pascal case, so they call it P case or whatever. But let's say we were calculating tax, we could do like tax rate. And so in where I live, it's 0.6. So that really wouldn't work because 0.6 isn't an integer. But let's just say we'll just say 6 for simplicity's sake. And so as you can see here, we've got int tax rate is equal to 6. And this variable, what it allows us to do, if we want to print it out, we can say printf, and this is where it's going to kind of get tricky. You use a percent sign, and then what it is like D for an integer, and then you put the integer name. You can do it with either like an ampersand, or you can just put the name. So we'll say tax rate. Okay, and so we'll go ahead and now we'll run this. We'll compile this. So if we compile and run, we're all good. As you can see here, it prints out our variable, which is 6. Okay, so what we've done is we've used our printf class, and we've done %d, and then a comma, and then our variable. And that allows us to print it out to screen. What this also allows us to do is we can actually capture this information. So for example, if we want to just initialize but not set int to any or tax rate to anything, for example, we can do that. We're initializing it, but we're not setting that value to anything for that variable. And so if we want to, we can capture this. And so we'll say printf, then we'll just put a string, whatever. We'll say enter your tax rate or whatever. Okay, so we can do this like this, and we will put a colon and then a /n for a new line. So copy this, printf, enter your tax rate, and then we're going to do what's called scanf. And so this just scans the console and allows us to take it in. And so what we're going to do is we're going to use %d again. So that's for the data type that it is. And then we're going to use ampersand and then the variable. And so we're going to say tax rate because that's the variable that we created. And then we can print out that variable just by saying printf, double quotes, %d, and then the variable name, like so. So this is the code, printf, %d, tax rate. There we go. We'll compile and run. And so it's going to say enter your tax rate. We're going to enter 6. And there you go. It prints out 6. Okay, so that's how you capture. So you print something, whatever, like a command prompt. You're going to use scanf %d for an integer. You can also do, and we'll talk more about these data types here in just a second. You can do scanf %d, and then the variable, put an ampersand in front of it, printf, and then you can print it back out after you capture it. And so what this allows you to do is prompt users for input, and you can store that input into variables. So it's a good reason, or a good way to learn how to program, to use meaningful variable names. And so, like I said here, tax rate, or maybe you're going to get a bonus, and so you would do like int bonus, or if you were going to capture a string for a name, you would be like first and then name. So it would be like first name, last name. And you're going to see that a lot the more you learn programming. You're going to have meaningful variable names like that. It'll be lowercase, and then the next word in it will start with an uppercase. And so there are some keywords that can't be used in C. You'll learn about those. There's stuff like double, int, long, switch, enum, return, things of those nature. They cannot be used. And if you're using an IDE like Dev C++ here, it'll let you know if those keywords are actually reserved and they can't be used. So there's 4 basic data types in C. So let's talk about those. So we've got char, and this is for a character. And so a character would be something like A, right? So we could say char, and we'll say first letter, and that's going to be equal to A. Now, C does, it does matter if it's uppercase or lowercase for the variable, if it's a char. So it matters if it's a lowercase a or an uppercase a. So we've got int, which is going to be a whole number, like I said up here, tax rate. And so we'll have that one, 6. We've got char, first letter, which is an A, lowercase a. You've got float, which is for single precision real numbers, right? So you can have float, and then you can say tax %, and we'll say 0.6, right? And then you're going to have what's called a double, and this is for double precision real numbers. And so then you could also have double tax %, and we would set it to like 0.06, right? So you've got one that is, this would be like 60%, this is 6%. Now note that they have the same variable names. You can do this. It's not smart, but you can have them because they are different data types. So one of the things to take into consideration whenever you're using data types is the size. And you'll learn about this if you get into C programming really, really in depth. You're going to learn about how much storage different data types store. So for example, an integer, which is any positive or negative number without a decimal point, it ranges in how big that number is. So for example, like negative 128 to 127, positive 127 is 1 byte. And then 2 bytes is up to 32,000 in both directions. And then 4 bytes is up to like 2 billion for the number. So whenever you consider working with pointers later on, you're going to learn how large a data type is. And so you got floating, they take more. You've got double, right? And so and then you got character, and a character can store a certain amount of bytes. And the character really is anything that's on your ASCII keyboard. So there's a lot of that to take into consideration. And so an int, like I said, it can be a number like 100 A float, like I put here, is 0.6, but it could also be, 100.6, like if you were doing a fever or something. And then you have what's called a long float. And to denote a long float, you put an L at the end of the number. And so that means two different things if you ever see that. The difference between a regular float and a long float. And a long float just means that it holds more. So there's a lot to learn when it comes to data types. And then you've even got enums. And so an enum is a series of constant integers. And so to create that, an enum, you would do enum, and then you can say like identifier, and then you would do, it's in brackets, and then it would be, whatever you want, enumerator, you put your enumerator list. So example of this would be, if you want to say like enum days of week, and you would set it to equal to, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, etc. Right? This is an enum, and it's also a data type in C. And so you've got char, like I talked about earlier. You've got your it's a lowercase, uppercase, and the char is actually tied to an int value, and so you can do numerical values with it. You can also do just a regular value. So notice that I haven't put string. A lot of programming languages have a string data type. C does not. So in order to use a string, you actually have to create an array, and we'll talk about arrays later on in a different video. But it would be something like you would say char, and then you might have name, and then you have to denote that it's an array. And so this array, though, for a name, depending on what it is, it gets really weird, but it can be what's called multi-dimensional arrays. So for example, like a name or something like that, it would have more than one array, so, or nested arrays, however you want to say it. They can be multiple different things. And so we talked about how to declare them. You can declare them without a value tied to them, or you can just leave them uninitialized. So if you're getting input, you can just create the variable name. It creates it in memory, and then you can assign a variable to it later. Right? So that's one of the things. You can also do a constant. So if we talk about a constant, for example, if in this situation, let's say your tax percent in this is 0.06, and you never want that to change, you can say const double, right, tax percent is equal to 0.06. And what that constant means is this cannot change. It will always stay 0.06. That's what a constant is. It doesn't change. You can't rechange it, etc. So it's always going to stay 0.06. It's a good way of doing things if they never have to change in your program. And then you can do operations on different things, and we'll talk about arithmetic later, because we're going to do one of the labs that's based on arithmetic. It's a good way to learn how to program, is if you're having to do a lot of arithmetic and stuff and just math. So there's a lot to learn in C. Like I said, our next one will be about arithmetic. We'll look at that. What you need to do, though, for this is just go ahead and start working with variables. Just start working with capturing input from the console. So maybe, for example, you can create something small, or you just want to, take in something and print something back out. And so if you wanted to, say, hey, enter your name, you can not do that because you don't know how to work with strings yet. But you can do, basic stuff like take in, for example, a number, print that number back out, or just work with it, learn it. You can also, of course, Google how to do some things if you don't want to wait. So let's talk a little bit more about printing stuff out. So the scanf, like I said, this %D, this is it's a sequence, like an escape sequence. It's a special sequence. This is not printed. This just denotes to the compiler that when it prints, it's going to be printing out an integer. So %D is for integers, and so tax rate in this example is an integer. If you want to do a float, you can do %LF, and so that would denote a float. I'm sorry, I'm wrong. LF is actually for a double, which is weird. So we'll go ahead and put these down here just so that y'all can see them. So we'll say %D, and that's for integers. %LF, and that is for doubles. Okay, and then you can do %C. Guess what this is for? This is for a character. %F is for a float. You can't use the float keyword, but you understand. And then you can also use, you'll learn about it later, %S. This is going to be to output a string. So there's a couple that you're going to learn. Or these are the main ones. There's also %%, and that's so that you can print out the % sign. So if you do %%, that's going to print out the % sign, because the % sign is actually an arithmetic operator in C, which is for modulus, and what that does is it returns what's left over from division. So for example, if you have 7 modulus 3, it's going to return 1, because 3 goes into 7 twice, which gives you 6, which then leaves 1 left over. So it gives you the 1 left over. So in our next video, we're going to start talking about, like I said, arithmetic operators. Go ahead and start working on variables, learning how to store them, how to print something like this, for example. So you print something, scanning that in, and storing that in a variable, and then printing that variable out. This is a really good way to learn how to work with variables, how to print variables, and how to get input and store them as a variable. So go ahead and just work on this in your spare time. Learn about how to do, for example, learn how to print these out, for the integers, the doubles, the characters, the floats. Don't worry about the strings. You don't have to worry about the modulus either. But learn how to do these, at least the integers, the doubles, the characters, and the float. You will use these a lot in our upcoming episodes. So go ahead and work on learning these, learn on scanning them, and then in our next video, we're going to talk about arithmetic and how to do. So we'll learn how to do math, and then we'll go through a lab and stuff. So this is all going to build on everything. So if you've enjoyed this video, go ahead, leave a like, leave a comment, and subscribe, please. There's a lot of time that goes into these videos. It's a lot of knowledge, and so I really hope this is helping y'all learn how to, get the basics of C. So this has been Jeff, the IT guy, and I'm signing off.